Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up, and welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am your host. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav. You can do your part in this endeavor by scrolling over and giving those like and subscribe buttons a quick click. And he is the captain of our ship. He is literally counting down every single day until tip-off for college basketball. He is MC Holland34 on Twitter. He is Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how is it going tonight?
It is going well, my friend. I'm not only counting down that, but I am counting down the days until fall starts to get here, because I think we're just been 100 degrees for the last, feels like 60 days straight. It's pretty brutal, but hopefully we'll get some rain here soon. But yeah, we're under 90 days to the college tip. I think Rothstein sent a tweet out there. It said we're 89 days away from first tip. So, just been grinding on these conference previews. Looking forward to kicking those off. I think we'll kind of start those towards the end of the month. Then also our guy, Jay Heinrich, right? He's producing some great content on all of our platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. We're doing the top 20 players that are returning for the college basketball season. So he's been doing some great work on that. But yeah, just mostly ready for summer to end. We're getting into fall. So obviously football's coming back, but that just means that basketball is not too far behind. So the excitement's in the building every day, right? And we're getting closer and closer as we drag through the summer here. But more exciting is the fact that we get to talk to a guest of one of our favorite mid-majors and a team that we picked to beat Indiana last year in our bracket during the play-in round. So to help us talk about a talented team returning here in the Mountain West is a man who covers the University of Wyoming football and men's basketball programs for the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, and Laramie Boomerang, former Texas Press Association Sports Writer of the Year. That is going to be Josh Criswell. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Josh, thanks for making some time for us. Like Mike mentioned, this is one of our favorite mid-major programs, if not one of our favorite programs, all told, to cover. Our guy Jay just did a really cool video about Hunter Maldonado not long ago, and this was one of our upset picks heading into the Big Ten. So definitely excited to get a little bit closer to all things Cowboys. The place that I want to start with you, we look at head coach Jeff Linder. He came in 2 years ago, and he inherited a program that was coming off of consecutive 24 lost seasons. So since then, he's really turned things around, right? The big leap last year had him at 25-9. They made the tournament, as we've talked about a couple of times here. So I want to know, from your point of view on the ground there in Wyoming, what has been kind of the secret behind his success? What are some things that have really impressed you about the coach as he's acclimated to Polk's culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what he's done. It seems like everywhere he's been, this being his second head coaching stop. He was at Northern Colorado before, took over a program that was facing all kinds of NCAA sanctions, had a little bit of a rough first year, and then his final 3 seasons there, I think he won over 68% of his games, won a Big Sky Coach of the Year award, CIT championship, and then he just has this track record. Coached under Randy Ray at Weber State, where obviously they had Damian Lillard back in the day, and then coached under probably one of the most consistent, if not most consistent, Mountain West coaches over the past decade or so, in Leon Rice at Boise State. So just has a really strong background. Everyone you talk to, I did a story on him about 2 or 3 months ago, I think, talked to some of his good friends in the coaching industry, like Arizona's Tommy Lloyd and North Texas's Grant McCaslin. And the one thing they all talk about is he just has this very special basketball mind that's close to unmatched, I would say, at the college level. Just really gets it, really knows. I think the thing that's really allowed him to thrive, especially last season, is his ability and kind of willingness to, not have a situation where he's set in his ways, where he's going to run the same system and kind of try to fit guys into it. He completely adjusts what he does to the talent that he has. Last year, you saw it with Hunter Maldonado and Graham Ike, and just kind of the really strong playmaking ability of those guys. And so really just, had this unique offense that I don't think I saw anywhere else in the country, where you had a 6-7 point guard that would back it down almost every time he had the ball, and then Graham Ike would back it down every time he got it, but he'd also have the ability to hit open guys for threes. So I think that's really a big part of it. This year, he's talked a little bit, I'm sure we'll get into it with the Pac-12 transfers, but just with some of the depth and the skill sets they have coming in, it sounds like they're going to play a little bit faster, obviously still do a lot of the dribble down stuff, but maybe get out and run a little bit more. So it should be exciting to see, but definitely seems like the program's on an upward trajectory and probably, in the best situation it's been in the past couple decades.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to watch last year. Obviously, you talked about Ike, Maldonado, we kind of teased, and you've talked about him a little bit, 18, 6-6, and then Ike with the almost 20 and 10 year. Both guys are coming back. Obviously, high expectations coming in. What can you tell us about these two beyond the numbers, and how do you see them handling expectations individually and now as a team going forward?
Yeah, I don't think the expectations are going to be any issue for these guys. Maldonado, I think, going on his 6th, maybe his 7th year with the program. And he's been a regular contributor for the past few years. And he, showed that ice in his veins this past year against Air Force. They were in danger of getting upset. The Falcons storm back and tie the game up in the final seconds. And, he's a Colorado Springs guy, was playing in his hometown and just took the ball full court and put a floater off the glass to win it as time expired. So I'm not really worried too much about him handling the expectations. And the same thing with Ike. I mean, obviously this team didn't have a lot of expectations, but they kind of got in a situation where they went on that run, got everyone's hopes up, then hit a little bit of a rough patch, and then they really had to rally down the stretch, had to probably get that win, in the first game of the Mountain West tournament against UNLV to get them into the big dance. So I don't think expectations are going to be an issue with either of those guys. I think one thing that helps them and also helps the team a lot is just they're very unselfish. They're not guys that have to go out and get 20, 25 points a game. I think both of them do a really good job of letting the game come to them and just finding all the weapons they have around them.
And that's a really good thing, because this team is all of a sudden kind of deep, right? We look around kind of beyond the two big names that you mentioned, and there are several other returning starters and key reserve players, guys like Jeremiah Oden, like Xavier Dussel, Brendan Wenzel. So, from your point of view, is there one maybe of those three or elsewhere on the roster that can kind of take a step forward this year and be a true X factor for this team?
Yeah, I don't really know if there's necessarily that one guy that stands out at this point, and not necessarily in a bad way. You look at Xavier Dussel. I saw him throw down a thunderous dunk, whenever they were playing their scrimmages out in Greece a couple weeks ago. He had the big three with about 30 seconds left in the Mountain West tournament to really kind of save the season and keep them playing. Brendan Wenzel transferred in from Utah and kind of came in a little bit heavy. They tried to bulk him up, and he's just kind of continued to get better, slim down and really kind of found his game. I think he can kind of be an all-around threat and maybe fill a little bit of that role. Maybe Jake Kyman too from UCLA with the sharpshooting abilities, but I think Wenzel will kind of fill that role of being maybe a little bit of a 3-and-D guy that can also put it on the ground and get to the rim and everything like that. That Drake Jeffries, really the only contributor that left the team. They'll need to kind of fill that 3-and-D role a little bit. And then you look at Jeremiah Oden, just an insane ceiling, 6'8", crazy athleticism. And you can tell he's getting a lot better at things like shooting the three and driving to the basket. But if I'm going to give you, maybe one guy just to sort of keep an eye on, someone that people maybe kind of forget a little bit because he was dealing with a lot of injuries last season, is Kenny Foster. I mean, he's a guy that came close to averaging double-digit scoring figures the season before, shot over 40% from the field and three-point line. So he's a guy that down the stretch, I think they might have held off on playing him when he could have got back in, just holding out hope to get a medical red shirt and things like that. But I think he's a guy that people might be overlooking a little bit that could play a big part on this team.
Yeah, so it's obviously nice to get some experience coming back. These guys have played together, but the thing that you had kind of hinted at earlier was the down transfers here. I mean, You're getting some Pac-12 love coming through. I mean, you've got Ethan Anderson from USC, with Max Ogbenpalo, as well as Jake Kyman from UCLA. What role do you see for these guys, and can you talk about how deep this team really is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that it's the deepest team in years. I think we'll see it over the course of the season if this is true, but I think it has the potential to be their deepest team this century. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm not really sure how the different roles are going to shape out with those guys, just because I think all three of them are extremely talented and will play an important part, but you just don't really know what the situation is going to be as far as the rotation goes. I think that's one thing where obviously it's not a bad thing, but I think early on, maybe in a couple of these games early in the season, they might be sort of trying to find their way a little bit, just in terms of how all the pieces are going to fit together. But I think Max Ogbenpalo, he's the highest rated recruit they've had in their recruiting service era. I think he was number 60 in the country coming out of high school. I would imagine he'll be in the starting rotation right away. He had a couple of really nice plays in the games I did watch him in the scrimmages over in Greece. They had a couple of Greek broadcasts that the teams over there did, and seemed to do a really good job. Just an all-around guy, very athletic, about 6'9" or so, can shoot, can dribble. I was really impressed with his ability to kind of be creative and find his guys on the wing whenever he's driving to the basket. But I mean, those are three guys that have a really unique story. They grew up playing AAU ball together, actually, out in Southern California. Max had all the accolades as far as, USA Today, all California team. And then Jake was the Orange County Player of the Year by the Orange County Register. And Ethan was the City Section Player of the Year in Los Angeles. So these are guys that have accomplished, not just in their college careers, but have chemistry together. Max and Jake played on the same high school team, and they won the Southern Section title as seniors. And then Ethan, he, won the City Section as a senior down there, and they played against some elite talent. I mean, as good as it gets. Ethan went up against guys like RJ Barrett, Max and Jake. They went up against, the Ball brothers, Big O, that's down at Atlanta now, and, Evan Mobley. It's kind of, the list goes on and on. So these guys have been playing, really talented guys. I think that they'll bring, I don't think that they'll be shocked by anything that they see in the Mountain West. So it's going to be exciting to see the fit. We probably really won't get a good feel of how everything's going to flow until probably closer to the start of Mountain West play. But I think once they get in the heart of that conference schedule, I think they have a chance to really dominate some people.
Yeah, certainly a lot to be excited about in terms of these incoming transfers. Definitely do need to see, how they fit into the team dynamic, but at least for your money, it sounds like Max probably has the best likelihood of cracking the starting lineup. If you are tuning in with us on YouTube, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons, and then let us know of this incoming transfer class, that we'll call them. Which player are you most excited about joining the Cowboys? Josh, I want to zoom out a little bit here. Obviously, we can't talk about the state of college athletics without talking about NIL. And specifically, Wyoming, I think, is in a pretty interesting, or maybe at least a unique set of circumstances. So I want to know from you, what's the NIL market like there in Wyoming, and is there maybe an advantage or a disadvantage to being in a mid-major conference in the day of NIL?
Yeah, I think definitely, especially in terms of kind of your big name guys and big name offers, I think the mid majors are obviously at a bit of a disadvantage. But at the same time, I think, if you're a school like Wyoming and you end up being one of the top mid majors in the country, I think that can open some doors. The athletic department reached a deal where they're in a partnership with Open Doors, which is one of the leading, NIL facilitators out there. So that kind of gives them a marketplace where people can, go in and find different ways to get involved with student athletes. The basketball team, I think, is, as far as Wyoming goes, and I think they're able to avoid, just some of the, I don't want to say negative, but the lack of benefits that you might have in a little bit of a larger market or something like that. They did a good job. I think, part of it being just because guys on the basketball team, there's, maybe 8 to 10 guys that are going to play serious minutes most years. And so they're a little bit more more visible, I think, in terms of, NIL opportunities and companies kind of finding the value, especially if you have a good team. So one thing they did last year is they did a partnership with one of the local stores, the Brown and Gold outlet, so fans could buy player jerseys, T-shirts. Custom tees were made for a couple of guys. One of the cooler things I saw was they had a "We Want EK" button, kind of a play off the old Dwight Eisenhower slogan from way back in the day. So I thought that was pretty cool. But it's been good. They've gotten creative, and I think the biggest thing, not just for Wyoming, but anyone that's at a mid-major, is really using your personality and social media. I think that's really the differentiator. I think if you're a star player that's not very active or doesn't have necessarily a very outgoing personality, I think a reserve, can make just as much money, if not more, if there's someone that has a ton of social media followers. So it's interesting. There's definitely not the pay to play that goes on at some of these programs. Not going to name any names, but it's definitely some opportunities, but obviously not as big as at some places.
Man, I'm jealous. I need to get the EK headband to go along with the jersey or the T-shirt, man. So you have to get us in touch after the show on that. But looking at the Mountain West as a whole, this conference was pretty strong last year. 7th in KenPom. You got some tough teams coming back. San Diego State looks really good. Boise State looks good on paper, as well as New Mexico. How do you see this conference as a whole shaking out? Do you think it's going to be as strong? And do you think the Cowboys have enough to win the conference?
Yeah, I think it's going to be another strong year for the Mountain West. Maybe not as many teams getting in the NCAA tournament. And I think once they get there, really the next step for this conference is finding ways to win games and go on a deep run. That's, kind of been the thing that's held back this league and maybe boosting its national perception a little bit. But you guys nailed it. I think it's kind of San Diego State and Wyoming sort of at those top two spots. Wyoming for all the reasons I mentioned, and then San Diego State, you bring back the newcomer of the year and defensive player of the year and Matt Bradley and Nathan Menza. Then you also add Darian Trammell from Seattle, who I think averaged close to 20 points a game. So I think they're going to be in a really good spot. And obviously coaching, never an issue at SDSU. Then Wyoming as well up there at the top. And then after that, I would have to say probably Boise State. They lose a lot, but they also bring back some key guys, have the freshman of the year in Tyson Degenhart. I'd be pretty shocked if he's not a first team all conference guy, or at least receiving votes for it. And then I think a team that I wouldn't say struggled a little bit, but were young and had some issues is New Mexico. I think, especially with that backcourt, Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr., I think they're going to be one of the most exciting backcourts in all of college basketball, not just, the mid-major level. So I think they're a team to watch. I think, Colorado State loses a ton, not just David Roddy, but 3 other guys that started just a ton of games for them. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think Nico Medved is one of the better mid-major coaches in the country, and I think he'll find a way to at least make them competitive. So if I had to guess, in some, some type of order, Wyoming, San Diego State is sort of a 1A, 1B. I think I gave SDSU the slight nod in my offseason Mountain West power rankings I did. And then after that, I'd probably go Boise State, New Mexico, and Colorado State as the top contenders in the conference.
Yeah, it's looking like another strong year. A lot of key players coming back in the conference, so it'll definitely be a battle. But yeah, we see it as a 2-team race in our preview that we'll have later on this month. Definitely Wyoming and San Diego State. So last question before we get you out of here. What needs to happen this year for everything to go right for Wyoming? And give us something that maybe the people on the national scene don't know about the Wyoming program.
Yeah, so I think as far as, to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and, these are guys that have really high goals. Obviously they want to win the Mountain West Championship, but they want to be, a figure in that national college basketball discussion, going a deep run at the big dance. So I think to do that, they have all the talent, they have the coaching in place. I think really the big thing for them is going to be staying healthy and finding how everything fits together. I don't think that's something that's going to take, 3 months or so to figure out. I think especially they're playing in some really competitive non-conference games, through some of these, neutral site events and things like that. So I think that'll give them a good chance to figure everything out. I think the thing for them as far as getting back to the big dance is just hoping that figuring it all out doesn't take too long, because depending on how the Mountain West goes, if it ends up having a down year, some of those non-conference games could be really pivotal in that resume, not just necessarily for getting in, but kind of getting yourself in a better situation to where you're not having to play a play-in game or not having to play a top 4 seed in your first game out there. So I would say that's the key. And then something I think a lot of people don't know about this team outside of Wyoming is just how talented this coaching staff is, behind Jeff Linder. I think I would put it up there easily with some of the best mid-major staffs in the country. You obviously have Ken DeWeese, who goes way back with Coach Linder, back to their recruiting days in Texas, and has been with them ever since he was at Northern Colorado. So you obviously have that. Sundance Wicks is, a huge personality and a really great guy that kind of brings the energy for the program. He's a guy that kind of did the rare thing of leaving your first college head coaching job to go back and be an assistant again voluntarily. I talked to him about that, and he said, maybe you question yourself whether you're crazy whenever you do that, but clearly it's all paid off. He's a guy that was, I think, the player of the year in Wyoming his senior year, didn't get a scholarship offer from the Cowboys, grew up a lifelong fan. So this has kind of been a dream for him coming back. Mark Rogers, the director of recruiting, he's a young guy, but just insanely talented. You can tell he has a really promising future in college basketball. Sean Vandiver, always, he's been an accomplished coach. Tim O'Flanagan's a smart guy at the director of ops position. So, I think that's one thing that's kind of a, maybe the unsung heroes on a national scale, at least, of all the success Wyoming's had, is just having one of the better coaching staffs in the country.
Josh Criswell _sports on Twitter. Check out all of his fantastic work at yosports.net. My guy is absolutely dialed in on all things Wyoming sports. Obviously, we went deep on the basketball side. Sounds like Josh can get you up to speed on the football side as well, and has a pretty cool little outlet himself around betting the FCS, which is very much so the cornerstone of this one and done program, right? There is an edge, a serious edge to playing where people are not. So definitely check him out on Twitter at all of his handles scrolling across the bottom. Josh, thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening and for getting us up to speed on all things Pokes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. So, Mike, we go from the Mountain West, from an emerging program over to the Blue Chips, to a very established program. We've got some pretty big news for Coach Cal in Kentucky. Tell the people what's the latest there with the Wildcats.
Yeah, it seems like reclassification has been the news over the last few weeks. We've gotten some pretty big names from the 2023 class reclassifying into the 2022 class, and that's no different here. Kentucky and Coach Cal, they pick up the 7-foot center here, is now in the 2022 composite ranking on 24/7 Sports, the number 39 overall prospect, and that's Ugonna Kingsley. Described as an exceptional defender. You watch him, an elite rim protector. On his commitment, basically stated that their track record with bigs, and who is happened to be at Kentucky in the middle right now, and that's Oscar Shibwe. So, definitely, see this guy coming in. Obviously might not play as many minutes up front, but Kentucky's been putting big men in since, we can remember now. So just another solid commitment here. What are your thoughts on Coach Cal getting another big man in here?
Yeah, I think the thing you touched on is really key, right? Obviously Kingsley is not going to bump Shibwe for, serious playing time, but it is another incredibly talented piece. It is another a bit of depth to add to the Wildcats. And the thing that comes to mind for me, actually, shout out one of our former guests, Chris Fisher. He tweeted this not long ago. With the addition of Kingsley, this now has Kentucky's composite recruiting class ranking up to number 3 nationally, which is the lowest ranked recruiting class that Coach Cal has ever had at the University of Kentucky. It's absolutely wild to think how much talent he has coming in by way of recruiting. This year is no different. We'll certainly see if things play out differently for him as we get into the season and get closer to tournament time. The other team that we want to talk about is another team that we have covered here and interviewed their beat reporter on the One and Done show, and that's the UCLA Bruins. What's going on with them on the West Coast?
Yeah, so UCLA obviously bringing back a bunch of talent, going to be one of the top teams, should obviously be the favorite in the Pac-12 here, but they're going to bolster their depth here and then get an overseas signee, but that has some pretty long-term potential. That's Abramo Kanka. He's a 6'7" wing from Italy, averaged almost 9.5 points at the FIBA Under-20 European Championship. He's a really good athlete. You watch his film. He does play above the rim, can get out and run. It's going to help soften the blow of Jules Bernard, who left early, seeking professional career here. Maybe going to take a few years to develop here. Might not see, obviously early minutes like we talked about with Kingsley, but someone to keep an eye on. Obviously the West Coast has gotten a lot of transfers from overseas, a lot of commitments from overseas. So definitely someone to look forward to. What are your thoughts on UCLA and this signing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps, right? It's fair to say that he is not immediately going to step into the role that has been vacated by Jules Bernard, but I don't think that was necessarily sort of his for the taking, right? I think that he brings, really good defensive prowess. I think that he brings a lot of energy, but I think more so the veterans of this team, Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez returning, I think they're the ones that are going to kind of fill that gap left behind by Jules Bernard. And we see Kanka come in and contribute on the defensive perimeter and really give them a nice bit of pop off the bench. So very much so what I am envisioning for this player. Probably won't quite be on the DFS radar anytime soon, but a name to file away because as he continues to develop, as potential injuries crop up, certainly someone that can rise to the occasion based on his pedigree. So that is the latest with the national news. If you are still with us on YouTube and you have not already, scroll on down, give a click to that like and to that subscribe button. It really does help us grow the channel. If you are also not already, get over to drroto.com and check out all of Mike's fantastic work. We have talked ad nauseum about his big board, his top 100 transfers. We're now heading into conference previews, into team previews. Literally everything that you need to get geared up for this CBB season will be waiting for you once you subscribe at drroto.com. Also, Mike and I will be waiting for you in our members only Discord, where we can answer all of your questions. We can tell you what is hiding on the dark corners of these rosters and these depth charts, and we can ultimately help you get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.